Always a glitch, isn't there? Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. And we are so excited to do this panel, this romantic suspense author panel. Elizabeth Goddard, Patricia Bradley, Irene Hannon, and Natalie Walters are all joining us tonight. They all have brand new books out in the last month or two. And I got to tell you, if you haven't read them, you're going to want to get started. In fact, in our chat line here on Zoom, will be the website click. So you can just click right into the website and order them right now, and they'll be at your house shortly. So, but we are very honored that these four authors are joining us tonight. We are going to have lots of fun talking about murder and mayhem and what it's like to be a romantic suspense author. So like I said, Elizabeth Goddard has her new title. I gotta get this right here. Deadly Target, which is book number 2 of the Rocky Mountain series. We have Natalie Walters, who started a brand new series, which yay, the Snap Agencies with Lights Out. Irene Hannon has got book number 2 of her Triple Threat series, Lebriath. That's one of those words of lies. And then Patricia Bradley has Crosshairs, which is book number 3 of her Natchez Trace Park Rangers. Yes, I got that right. So they will be joining us shortly as soon as they are able to click back on. And we're hoping that's happening. There we go. We got 1, 2. There they are. Hi, everybody. And Elizabeth, yay. And all your beautiful books. So congratulations on everybody on your new releases.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I always like to start with, and so we'll just kind of round robin this. And you know what, I should tell our audience, please send in your questions either via Zoom chat or Facebook, and we will get those to the authors as soon as we can. So I'm going to start with, let's just start with Elizabeth. Tell us about your new book and your series that you're working on.
Right. Deadly Target is the second book in my Rocky Mountain Courage series that came out after Present Danger. And it's about a criminal psychologist, Dr. Erin Larson, who runs a missing persons podcast. And she is dragged into searching for the answers in a cold case when her ex-boyfriend, Detective Nathan Campbell's father is shot. And it's just a lot of twists and turns from all different directions, which is my favorite kind. And I'm sure I know all the authors here love that too. So,
awesome. Irene, what's your new one about? Even though I can't say the title.
Yes, it's Labyrinth of Lies. We'll get that word right this time. Labyrinth of Lies. It's book 2 in my Triple Threat series. And that series is, I'm featuring 3 sisters who are all involved in truth-seeking professions that put them in the line of fire. Okay. So in this book, we're meeting Kate, who is a police detective. And I should also just quickly say that when I write a series, each of the books can be read as a standalone. I don't carry plot threads over from book to book. So if you're listening or watching and you're thinking, oh, it's book 2, I can't read that because I haven't read book 1. No worries, every book stands alone. So awesome. In this book, we have Kate, who is a police detective. And she is sent undercover to an exclusive girls' boarding school to investigate the disappearance of one of the students who is the daughter of a very high-profile business executive. So she's in the school and very unexpectedly runs into the man that she once loved, who is there with a different agenda. And they end up working together as they try to investigate what happened here. And the more they dig in, the more they realize that all is not quite as rosy at this school as its image would portray, and that very few people are who they appear to be. So as they get closer and closer to figuring this out, of course, the danger escalates to a very, very dramatic conclusion.
Yay. And Patricia, you have your new one.
I have it too.
Oh, good.
Yes. Sometimes I'm caught off guard and I have to fumble for it, but I got it out. But my book is set on the Natchez Trace down at Natchez. The Natchez Trace runs from Nashville to Natchez. Try saying that twice.
Yeah.
And it, when I pitched this book, I envisioned it being close to me. I'm about 35 miles from the Natchez Trace, but my editor fell in love with the idea of Natchez, which that's fine. I'd never been and wanted to go. But book 3, this is book 3. And like Irene's, they can be read. They're all standalones. Standoff and Obsession are the two before this, and I carry characters over, but they have their own story. And in this one, Ainsley Beaumont has returned to Natchez basically against her will. She's assigned there because she's an ISB ranger, which is what the elite, they're almost like the FBI of the National Park Service. I didn't even know about them until I started researching this book. I thought I could just write about rangers. No, the Natchez Trace Rangers are different from any other of the Park Service rangers. So anyway, it was quite an education. But and she gets back. She's got sent there to investigate the murder of a 16-year-old girl, and the first person she runs into during a tornado is her old flame, Lincoln Steele, and he is a former FBI sniper who can no longer shoot a gun because he almost killed a 10-year-old boy, and he's having PTSD flashbacks. And so, but as she investigates the murder, she becomes a target. Not necessarily, she's not sure if it's a target of, then no one knows if she's the target of the girl's murderer or someone from her past, a past case. But Lincoln wants to protect her, but how does he protect her when he can't carry a gun? And how does he get her respect? Because I mean, they have a lot of problems. They have a lot of history. So
okay, awesome. Can't wait. I can't wait to see what happens. And Natalie, you got a whole new series.
A whole new series. I got my book. I had to go run and get my book because I didn't have it next to me before we started this. Like everybody, I was like, oh shoot, I need to go get one. So it's Lights Out. It's the first book in my new series, the SNAP Agency series, which stands for the Strategic Neutralization and Protection Agency. And this story starts off with CIA analyst Bryn Taylor, who is invites members of foreign intelligence to the United States for a cooperative global terrorism program she's created. And one of those foreign spies goes missing in the United States. So she has some limitations on what she can do being with the CIA in the United States. So she is teamed up with this Strategic Neutralization and Protection Agency, the SNAP agency. And just so happens the man she's teamed up with is her ex-boyfriend from 10 years prior. And they have to work together to find the missing spy before something terrible happens.
That always makes for a good murder mystery. So
yeah,
this
absolutely. I got that part at least.
So I got to ask, and this is one of these things that I've always wanted to know, and I will pick on one of you and we'll get started, but is how do you do research on murder and mayhem and not end up on the government watch list?
who said we weren't on there?
I was thinking.
Yes, exactly.
I'm sorry. That's a great answer, Patricia. Thank you. Okay, now I know, and I'll just move on. So, but you know what? Okay, then we'll do it differently. We'll do it differently. But and it is one of the questions that was asked. What kind of research do you do for these kind of books? I mean, and to be honest with you, and Natalie, I'm going to pick on you just a little bit. Is SNAP an actual agency, or is this something you came up with for the book?
So SNAP is not an actual agency.
Okay.
My husband's in the military and we've traveled across the country and we've lived in other countries. And so we've been in organizations that are with other agencies. And
Okay.
so we were on a car ride and I was just thinking like, I had this idea of doing this like kind of rogue agency a little bit. And we came up with the name and I was like, well, this works because they're strategically like protecting our nation and making sure that they neutralize any threats before they become threats. So they're letting Americans live in the oblivion that we're all peaceful, nothing bad's happening because they take care of everything before it becomes a problem.
I like that, by the way. I like pretending that nothing is going to be bad.
Yeah,
So we're gonna bounce back off the research, but I do want to ask that. But because of what Natalie said, one of the people wrote in and asked, how do you guys come up with the plots and characters for your books? which I think is a great idea or a great question, because like Natalie said, they were just riding along in the car. That's awesome. So where do you guys, and let me just start with Patricia. Where do you get your ideas for your books?
Just about anywhere. Of course, we have to make proposals when we pitch a new series. And so I sit down and first I pray because that's basically the starting point. But then ideas will come. I mean, a plot will loosely come. How many times I follow that plot, I'm not going to say. But anyway, like this particular one in the South, and it may be everywhere, but ancestry and heritage is huge. And people will kill to keep secrets. So that's basically where that started, because I do know of people who have murdered to keep a secret from coming out.
Wow.
So of course, the South is a wonderful place to get ideas.
I love your accent.
What accent?
Yes, we were shocked to find out she was from Mississippi. So Irene, where do you get your ideas from?
I get that question a lot, and I'll build a little bit on what Patricia said about that. And I want to go back to the research before I finish too, because I have a funny story about that.
Oh, good.
But I'm not one of these authors who has this file full of ideas. I always hear a lot of authors say, I have a million ideas. I could never write them all if I lived 100 years. And I'm like, oh, I wish I was you. I don't have that. I literally start from scratch with every book. And usually the idea is triggered by just something I read or something that I overhear or a situation I observe. And it'll just plant this little seed of an idea. And then I'll start researching that. And as I research, typically more ideas get generated. And I'm going to borrow something that a fellow author once said. She said, I start with a strand in this web. And that's how I start. I have this little strand. And then she said, I just research and I add more strands. And eventually I have a web. But she said, when I go back to the finished web, I can very rarely say what the first strand was. And I think that's probably true for me, for how I write. So my ideas come from everywhere, but they start as this little tiny seed. And I have to build on what Patricia said about research too. You asked the question, how do you keep from being on some watch list or something? And the very first romantic suspense book that I wrote for Revell was very ambitious. It was a 2-continent setting. I had half of it in Afghanistan and half here, and there was a diplomat involved in a terrorist plot. And I was all over the internet researching terrorism in Afghanistan, and I actually wanted to get an idea of the layout of the embassy in Kabul, the US embassy. So I did all this research on the internet, and I actually found the layout, believe it or not, after I dug enough. And my husband got so nervous, and he said, Irene, if anybody is monitoring your internet usage, we're going to have the Homeland Security people at our front door. But fortunately, that didn't happen. But I sometimes wonder, because of the kind of research probably all of us do, if we maybe are on a watch list somewhere. I don't know.
Just assume it.
Well, there's a meme that floats around that shows two people and they're studying the computer, and well, this person is mentioning this and this and this, and then the guy next to him says, oh, don't worry about it, they're suspense writers.
I love that meme.
I love it.
So Elizabeth, how about you? Where do you get your ideas from?
Well, it's a little bit of what everyone has already mentioned, but I remember when I attended my very first conference, I asked that question, and I was told, you just start asking what if? And at the time, I just couldn't imagine how people came up with their ideas. But since then, I've really just trained my brain, and now I can't shut it up. I can't, there's just, like you were talking earlier, the file, I have that file, and then I also have the new ideas, and there's just not enough time to write. But the problem is, you know, when I'm sitting down to write a story, now I've got so many ideas coming at me. Well, do I want to go this direction, or what do I want to do that? And I have this terrible manuscript that I'm working on right now. I hate to say terrible, but messy. I don't know about the other of you, but it's just messy. And I just write, well, maybe we'll do this later. And I just keep writing. I just throw the ideas in and I come back and I fix it after I have the huge big picture of what it's going to look like. But everything is inspiration. And you know, I listen to people around me and I'm like, that's a good idea. I hope you don't mind, but this is going in the book. You know, I just write it down and somewhere it'll go in the book and it all works out. So I hope everyone else is a messy writer too. I wish I hadn't said that.
No, that's, you know what, and that don't, because that's very honest, that you write that way, that you know,
I didn't write that way.
But you know, the finished product isn't messy. You know, it's how do you get from point A to point B, and that's how you do it. And I love hearing that. So, because don't look at my desk. So, so there you go. Natalie, did you want to add anything? I kind of picked on you very early and very quickly there. So
That's okay. No, I was just gonna say that, like, for Lights Out in particular, that story actually came to me in a conversation that I had with a friend of ours who's with an agency, and he was telling me a story about how they had invited somebody over and that person had gone missing, and then they found that person and sent him back to his country. But I think it's kind of like what the other author said. You just kind of listen. You know, an idea can pop up from anywhere, and it could even be, it doesn't even have to be like the catalyst for a story like this one is. It could just be like, oh, that's a really fun character quirk, and you can throw it in somewhere, or a funny situation that happens and you can pop it in your story somewhere. So that's all I have to add.
yeah, awesome. Those are all great answers and just fascinating. So
Can I add one more thing?
oh, please do.
Okay. My very first story, I had been away from writing for 8 years, and because I was working in the abstinence program. And so I had gone part-time. During that 8 years, I had not one fiction thought, not one,
Interesting.
because I was writing a curriculum, I was writing a workbook, and I just had absolutely nothing fiction. And so one morning, as I'm sitting doing my quiet time, suddenly this dark-haired woman appeared in my vision, my brain, and she told me her name and that someone was trying to kill her. And I said, yes, God has given me back my romantic suspense. And that was the very first book that was published, Shadows of the Past.
Oh, sure.
And
Wow.
so I had to find out who was trying to kill her and why.
Yeah.
So,
And only a suspense writer would go, yay, somebody's trying to kill you.
yeah.
Oh, that is awesome. And thank you for sharing that. That is awesome. I love hearing these stories. So somebody would like to know, and I bet you know what, I don't know. I shouldn't say anything like that, but do you tend to think of a plot first or a character first? And now, Patricia, you have just said that you had a character the first time. Is that usually true, or do you?
It's a little bit of both.
Okay.
I have to, before I can start writing, but most of the time my plot and my characters kind of come together. I mean, it's like that. It's a character and someone's trying to kill her.
Yeah.
So that was
Interesting.
basically the plot.
Yeah. Natalie, how about you?
It depends on the story. So there's
Okay.
sometimes where a character will, in my first series, my very first book, Lane Kent was she was who started the story. And I was like, I got to figure out how to write a story for her, or, you know, what is her story? How can I tell it? And then like, in this one, it was the plot. There was this idea of somebody missing in the United States who's a spy and, you know, might have, you know, ulterior motives to cause harm. So it just depends on what kind of idea I have. So, and sometimes in that process, if like it's plot driven, it takes me a little bit more time and effort to discover my characters. And then when it's character driven, it takes me a little bit, I have to really figure out plot. And like, I a lot of times get them caught in a corner and I'm like, okay, now what? What do I do to get them out of there? I don't know.
And you're going to do what Elizabeth does then. What if?
Yes. Yes. Lots of what ifs.
Too many. Too many possibilities.
And how about you, Elizabeth? Do you do plot, characters, or both? What do you do first?
Well, I same thing that Natalie and Patricia have already said, you know, it just depends on the story. And I used to do plots because initially my publisher that I wrote for required a chapter by chapter synopsis, and I wrote that out. But with each book, I find it's different. Whatever inspires me to write the story, whether it's a character, as you said, Natalie, where I have to write a story around that person, or it's just the plot. And a lot of times it's just I feel like it's just like this big lump of clay, to talk in artist terms. And I'm just like pulling pieces off, sticking them back, and just, trying to massage it into a story or something that looks like something. That sounds like a terrible process, but every book is different, and I do every book different. And so sometimes it can even be the setting. Actually, is a lot of times I really want to set a story here. I love to really have beautiful settings, adventure settings, mountains and ocean. And I try to set my books in those kind of places. And so a lot of times it'll be, okay, what about this town? Who would fit in this town, and what kind of story could happen around it? So it's all part of this, it all is part of the same package.
Yeah, interesting. How about you, Irene?
Yeah, I really can't add much to that. Everybody's pretty much covered it, I think. I think it's like Patricia said at the beginning, I think that probably for me, the plot and the character end up being so closely intertwined that I can't say which one of those started the story. It's somehow one or the other will come to me, and almost immediately the other meshes in. If it's a plot idea, I'm immediately thinking, well, what kind of characters would work best in this kind of plot? And if it's a character, it's like, what can I do to this character that would really push them to their limits and challenge them? So it's just, I don't know if I could actually say which comes first. I think for me, they pretty much work together.
Interesting. Huh. You guys all write so differently, and yet you guys got, this really cool genre. So let me ask you this, guys. What is the hardest thing about writing romantic suspense?
Oh, I'm interested in what they have to say.
I can say right off the bat.
I'm like with seasoned authors here. I'm like, okay,
Romance.
tell me, I need to take a note.
And Patricia, what were you saying?
Romance.
Romance, the romance part.
Much easier to kill them than to get them together. I lay down the suspense line first on my draft, and then I go back and I have to add in the romance, because it's just, and then mine is more like relationships.
Okay.
And of course there's some romance, but it's just, romance is hard for me.
Interesting. How about you, Irene?
I really think romantic suspense is, in some ways, I mean, I'm a romance writer, so all of my books have romance in them. But I think in some ways it's almost easier to write romantic suspense or a suspense book with romance, because our suspense books tend to be pretty high intensity, lots of danger, lots of action. People are always running into challenges. And so you've got a lot of that going on. And I think for me, being able to put a romantic piece to that allows me to intersperse those relationship scenes with the high intensity scenes, kind of giving the reader a chance to take a breath, catch their breath, have a little bit of downtime before ratcheting the suspense back up. So it's a great combination for me. I don't really find it hard to integrate the two at all.
Awesome. Elizabeth?
Well, I think that for me, the hard part really is trying to find the balance between the suspense and romance. When I first started writing this genre, I was trying to find out what readers really want. And some want more romance, some want more suspense. And I think that's what makes romantic suspense a very difficult genre in that way. And I found that, readers would maybe on the same book, different readers would say, oh, it had too much romance, or oh, it had too much suspense. So they're all taking something different away. So I realized, I just have to write my thing, however I do, whatever that balance is. And people, I'll grow my own audience that way and quit trying to write more of this or more of that. But It is a hard balance. And then the other thing is that a lot of times people think that it's too unrealistic or it's too rushed. But I'm like, you know what? You don't get romantic suspense if you think that, because that is what we love. We want, it's just all the adrenaline and the romance. And it's just a fun, wild ride. And that's just part of the genre. We have a fast romance going on with all the action and suspense. So
awesome. Okay, Natalie, are you done taking notes?
Yes, and they didn't
Okay.
even say the one thing that I thought. I was like, okay,
Oh, good.
they're gonna say this, but then they can give me like my clue. So no, for me, I think the hardest part for writing romantic suspense is coming up with all the ways to kill people. Like I feel like, or to like, to go after my heroine. I'm like, okay, they're getting mugged again, and they're getting in a car chase again, and they're like, I was like, they're being stalked again. So for me, it's coming up with like the unique ways to like incorporate that suspenseful part. So I'm gonna have to start.
I agree with that too.
I'm gonna have to start a little like a text group with them and be like, okay, how can I do that this time?
That's fine. We're on a watch list.
So you're on a watch list.
No, that's a good point. That's true too.
Yeah, awesome. I gotta ask then, and I love the different answers I've gotten for this, is have you ever had a character like completely go off plot? Like, okay, this was my bad guy and now he's not, or whatever. Have you guys had that? I see
All the
some
time.
nods, so, oh, good. Somebody share. Who first? Elizabeth, go ahead.
Oh,
Sorry.
well, it's just part of my process, just the characters
Okay.
kind of, I don't even really know who the characters are until I'm starting to write, and then I get to know them as I write. So that's part of the process. And yes, I might have something in my mind of how I want things to work out, but yeah, they will lead me in a different way. So I think it's funner that way, because if I'm surprised about what happens, then so will the readers be.
Have you, and I'm going to interrupt. Well, Natalie, I saw you're getting ready there. So, have you ever like gone, like, what was I going to say? Like where the character, you haven't let them go that way. You know what I mean? Like if you like, no, you're going to have to be the bad guy because I need you to be, or have you changed the story because the character was wandering off? Then Elizabeth, have you done that?
I have changed the story, and I think
Okay.
that probably, I don't know, you guys, haven't you all changed the story because you're writing and you're like, this works better for the story because that's the way the character's going to go. I haven't really forced my characters to do something they didn't want to do.
You're not going to.
Yeah.
What'd you say? What?
You're not going to force them.
Oh, mm-mm.
They'll quit talking to you.
And Natalie, you were going to share?
Oh no, I was just scratching my nose. I told you I had to have the fan on.
That's true, you did. So, well, how about you? Have you had characters wander off?
No, I haven't had characters wander off. I have had characters who I thought were gonna have like a more impactful like purpose in the story, and then like I'll get to a point where I'm like, okay, I can't fit the pieces together right, and I don't like. It's almost like a little bit like writer's block, but I'm like, there's something like. It's like I can't go forward. Like I know there's something wrong with my plot or my story, but I can't figure it out. And then it usually takes my critique partner to be like, maybe you don't need this person. And I'm like, oh yeah. And then they get cut. So once that happens though, then it feels like the story like works the way it's supposed to. It's almost like I'm trying to put maybe too much like subplot in it or something, and I need to nix it. So that's usually what ends up happening for me.
Interesting. Irene, how about you? You've written, many books.
Yeah, and it's been really interesting to listen to some of these answers because I write very differently in this regard than Elizabeth, because I do know my characters pretty well when I start the story. Not that they don't surprise me, and I'll tell you one example of that, but I know pretty much a lot about them when I start, and I do know who my villain is right from the beginning. But that doesn't mean characters don't surprise me, because I was writing one book and I had one of my scariest villains, probably I do a pretty deep psychological dive in my characters, and I take readers into the heads of all of my characters, including the villains. And this guy was really scary. And so I'm writing along, I'm about a third of the way through the book, and he's already a pretty bad person. and I'm writing along, and literally he told me something. I'm writing and I could almost like hear this character telling me something that he did in the past that came out of nowhere.
Oh,
And I literally stopped writing. And I just said, "You did what?" I mean, I'm talking to my computer, okay? And I had to actually say, okay, well, that really helps explain a little bit about why you are the way you are. So I had to go back and make a few minor changes earlier in the book, but not a lot. But it was like literally he told me something and I stopped dead in my tracks and talked to my computer. So.
and Patricia. How about you?
Most of the time I know who my villain is, not always. A couple of one book in particular, I got to the reveal page where I'm revealing who the villain is. I got halfway down the page and I said, you're not the right one. And so
No.
I just couldn't do it. I mean, he just wasn't the one. And so it was another person, and I had to go back and beef up their part in the book. And so it was that, and a lot of times, and one time I was on another story, I was typing along, and like Irene said, the character told him something, and I said, "You're the one." Because at that point, I really wasn't sure. I always have a lot of possibilities of who it can be. And so, and I don't always know who the villain is.
That's interesting.
And I usually have more than one villain too.
Okay. And yeah, so you've obviously had even the villain surprise you then because of what you just said. So that's fascinating. So, things I don't learn. So this is an interesting question that came in. I really like this. Have you ever killed off a character and then later you wish you hadn't done it because you wanted to put them in a new book? Who wants to jump into that one? Because then you're going to have people go, "Oh, but that was my favorite character." So, Irene, have you ever killed off somebody you wish you hadn't?
I'm trying to think back through my volume of books, and I can't think of anybody I've killed off that I ever was sorry about. It's like, okay, they died when they were supposed to, and I didn't need them anymore. No, I can't say that that's ever come back to haunt me.
Oh, good. Patricia, have you ever had a murder come back to haunt you?
No, I ended up killing one off because I had him just arrested and in jail, and then he was at the end of the book, he escapes, and my editor wouldn't let me do it, and she said, because you haven't done any of the other books this way. So I had to go back and kill him off. To get rid of him.
Much better plot line. The things you hear on the internet nowadays. Elizabeth, how about you?
No, I can't say that I've done that. I actually hate killing characters, even though they're fictional. I hate killing them, and it's just I try to know that there has to be bodies in my books. So
I've heard that from other authors that they will cry or weep when somebody they have to. And Natalie, have you killed anybody off that you didn't mean to?
I've meant to kill everybody off that I wanted to kill, but I did in the current in Lights Out, there is a death that I was kind of sad that happened. Not that character would have had another book or anything like that, but I was sad that character had to die.
Yeah, no,
awesome. So somebody else asked, which I think is kind of an interesting question also, is how do you choose which country your antagonists are from? Because some of your antagonists are from foreign countries or from the US. So how do you choose that? Let's see, Natalie, I've been letting you go last, so you get to go first this time.
Okay. So I think it just depends on what suits the plot. So okay. If where the location of the plot is, that tends to be how I choose what country they're from.
Does anybody else have anything different than that, or are you guys all pretty much plot driven on that one?
Mine are all set in the US.
Oh, that's an easy decision then. Yeah. So awesome. Let's see. And you know what? And this is kind of a general question, and jump in where you want, is how long does it usually take you from like starting your story to getting ready to get it in print? And we know, most of the people that come on here a lot know it takes about a year once it gets to the publisher. So I think they're pretty much asking, how long does it take you to write a book? Who would like to go first there? Elizabeth, maybe?
I think the standard answer to that is however much time they give you is, or how, I mean, let's say they give you 9 months, and but I guess I'm saying this backwards. You guys help me, because they may give you 9 months, but you take 2 months to do it. I don't know. Whatever time you have is how long you'll take. No, I am saying it right. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And you guys all kind of agree on the timeline, or? I mean,
About 6 months from
Okay.
conception to
yeah.
to working on the characters, the setting, the plot, to actual writing, usually about 3. When I start writing, I'm usually come in about 3 months.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah, that sounds like it. Oh, do you guys try to visit the city? And I know visiting countries right now can be difficult, but do you guys try to visit where you set your book sometimes? I know maybe going to Afghanistan, Natalie, might not have been high on your list, or Irene, somebody's.
Yeah, that was me.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry, Irene, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
So, but do you try to go to places, especially if they're set in the US, or do you do research online, which, that works wonderful nowadays? So,
Well, I'll jump in on this because since you mentioned Afghanistan, that was the only suspense book I've written that had a dual continent setting.
oh,
And generally, any book I write, I try to visit the place I'm writing about. And I'm very dedicated to research. And I think you do write a better book in general if you have visited the place that you were writing about. However, I wasn't that dedicated that I went to Afghanistan. I thought I did online research there. I also hooked up with someone who did humanitarian aid trips there under the radar. So I had a lot of good input from people who had been there and knew the country. And I did so much research that honestly, I think I could have found my way around Kabul if somebody set me down in the middle of the city, because I really did a lot of research. So that was the only place that I have not visited. But I'll say that for my suspense books, all of my suspense books have been set in the same place, other than that one. And I do that for a specific reason, because my stories, I think Elizabeth mentioned that she uses setting as a very important part of some of her books. Setting in my books is not that consequential. They could almost be set anywhere, because I'm focused more on plot and story than setting. So I use a setting that I am very familiar with, that I don't have to research purposely, because I do so much other research for my books. I have about 100 pages of typed research notes and citations when I finish a suspense book. And I use only a tiny bit of that in the book, but I have to know that to write credibly about the subject matter. So writing about it, setting my books in a place I'm very familiar with takes one bit of research off my plate and lets me focus on the things that I need to know for the story. So I've set them all in the same place except for the very first one.
interesting. Huh.
The other fun thing about that too is, I'll add one more thing, is because I do that, I'm able to sometimes work in characters from previous books. So new readers don't know that, but readers who have been with me a long time recognize them. So it's like meeting old friends again. And I get lots of good comments about that too.
Oh, fun. Anybody else? I'm sorry, Patricia, what?
I said, that's an Easter egg.
Mhm.
Yes. Yeah, and you're right. You're right, Irene. Readers love that. I hear it in the store all the time. Oh, we saw or met so-and-so again. It's like finding old friends back. So
Yeah, right.
yeah.
Yeah, except for the Natchez books, I set my books close to where I live.
Okay.
Even though I did move one of them over to Memphis, closer to Memphis than it actually is. But my new series will be set in the Cumberland Plateau near Chattanooga,
Ooh, nice.
which I'm fairly, my sister lives there, my mother lived there. So I'm going next week to find me a small county and a small town and set up a fictional one. I will not do another one where I have to know what restaurant is on what street and what they serve.
I sense a story there. I gotta ask then, did you get in a lot of trouble?
No, but it takes a whole lot more research. You have to, when I'm working along and I have them stop at this restaurant and they order something, and I think, oh, wait, do they have that there? So I have to stop and go see. I mean, and they have places in Natchez called Fat Mama's Tamales. They have, all kinds of crazy names, and I forget what each one serves. So, and I love going there. I really love going to Natchez. I went during the spring pilgrimage, toured some of the houses. It's just that place is just steeped in history, and I
Awesome.
love learning about the Natchez Trace.
Awesome. How about you, Elizabeth? Do you do the research, or are you?
I have traveled extensively and I've lived in many places, and most of the places I've written about, I have been there, and I try to do another research trip if needed, or, you know, talk to experts. But I'm also with Patricia in that I create fictional everything. Like I take a, a broader setting, let's say the Rocky Mountains, whatever, or Rocky Mountain Courage is set in a fictional county near Gallatin County, which is a real county, but I base my fictional county, my fictional towns off of real places. And that way I don't have to, I can make it my own restaurant and what's on the menu, that kind of thing. So it makes it a lot easier. But a really interesting story is that there was another series I wrote several years ago, and I based it on the Washington coast, and I wrote 4 books, and I now live an hour away from where I wrote that series. I mean, it's just like,
That's
so, but
awesome.
I know it's awesome. I'm just like, thank you, Lord.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Fun. And how about you, Natalie? And now I know you mentioned you're a military wife, which thank you for your service. And you've lived in a lot of places, so.
Yeah. So I think that's probably helped me with like my setting. So in Lights Out, there's some scenes that happen in Egypt, and we lived there for 2.5 years. So I got to put some fun details and things in that, which I had my sister who came and visited me, and one of my friends who lived there also was like, it was just like going back to Egypt. So that really made me feel good, like I had done a good job on that. But like Washington, D.C., you know, my first series is set in Georgia, it's a fictional town in Georgia, but it was mimicked after the area that we were stationed at as well. So it's fun to be able to I can kind of like hop around because we've lived so many places. I can incorporate a lot of those details into the story.
Interesting. So somebody wants to know if any of you have a favorite character that you have written. Let's start with Patricia.
The last one I just finished. Well, they're the ones I'm most familiar with.
Sure.
I mean, I guess probably though, the very first character, my very first book, and don't ask me what her name is right
Okay.
now.
We won't. Definitely won't. We'll look it up later. So how about you, Irene?
You know, I don't really think I have a favorite character, because when I'm writing the books, I'm so into the books and I love all my characters, which is one of the reasons that I like to bring them back when I can, since I'm writing in the same location. I hate to let them go. I love them all. They're all unique and they have interesting personalities, and I like them all. I really couldn't pick one out. I do think I'm always most engrossed in the current book that I'm writing, but then I go on to the next book and those people also win my heart. So no, it's like, it's like asking who's your favorite child. They're all great characters. I love them all.
Yeah. And you know what, it dawned on me, I'm just continuously going around the circle on my screen here. So I feel like I'm sorry. I really apologize. I don't mean to ask you guys all last all the time, but Elizabeth. Sorry.
I don't have anything to add. I don't have a favorite character, and you know, the book that I'm on is the people I love at the time. So
Yeah. And Natalie, I'll try to go the other way around next time.
That's okay. I think like I kind of agree with like Patricia. I think my very first character, Lane Kent, will always be very near and dear to me. I think just her story, it was just really personal for me. And then most recently, I have a really fun character in Lights Out, Keikoa Young. He's my Hawaiian cryptologist. So he's just a lot of fun. I get a lot of comments and they enjoy him. So he's just got a really off the page personality that I love. So. But I do love all my characters equally.
I'm glad to hear that because I think that comes through in all you guys' writing, that you like your characters. I think that's what makes for good writing. So let me ask one quick question, then we'll have a couple wrap up here. But if you weren't writing romantic suspense, what genre would you like to write in? Natalie?
Contemporary romance.
Oh, interesting. Elizabeth?
I'm gonna be kind of strange here and say fantasy.
Ooh, that would be fun. Okay. And Irene, I know you write kind of the contemporary romance, so.
Yeah, and that's, so that's really my answer. I alternate between the two genres. And I've been doing this for a while now, every other book. So I get this high intensity suspense novel that I'm working on. And then I finish that and I'm so ready to go to Hope Harbor, my long running now contemporary romance series where there's plenty of drama, but not of the life and death variety. So I love both of those genres. And so I've been very fortunate to be able to create a niche where I can alternate between the two. And I think that helps keep me fresh as a writer too. So I'm doing exactly what I would want to do.
Oh, awesome. And Patricia?
Probably cozy or historical suspense.
Oh, interesting. That historical suspense is always fun to read too. So, well, good. So Elizabeth, I'm going to start with you here. What, if you can share, what are you working on next?
I am working on the first book in a brand new series set in Alaska for Ravel.
Ooh,
So very
awesome.
excited. Yeah, very excited.
Is
It's
it-
a beautiful setting.
Is it going to be a 3-book?
Yes,
Awesome.
3 books.
Awesome. Romantic suspense, all that fun stuff.
Of course.
Oh, awesome. And Irene, I know you have a Hope Harbor one coming out soon.
I do.
So, okay.
Yep, I just did the final page proofs for that one. That'll be out next April.
Okay.
And then in October next year, I will have the final book in the Triple Threat series, which has just been titled. It's called Body of Evidence, and it features the youngest sister, who is a forensic pathologist.
Awesome.
And after that, I just signed a new contract for another suspense series that will follow on the heels of this one. So.
Yay. And Patricia, what are you working on?
The Pearl River series, which will be set in the Cumberland. I'm about to start it. I still have the 4th book in the Natchez Trace, which is Deception.
Oh, interesting. Good. Good. And then Natalie, what are you working on?
I just turned in the edits for book 2, which is Fatal Code in the Snap Agency series. And that comes out in the summer. And then I am working on book 3 in the series.
Oh,
which
good.
doesn't have a title yet. So
Okay.
yeah,
That's all right.
Yeah, mine's a new.
That working title thing.
that's right. Working title.
You bet. So we'll just kind of go around the circle. I always like to let you guys advertise your websites, or if you're on Instagram or Facebook more, please mention that. But where can your fans find you? I don't know who we haven't started with. Irene?
Well,
I have
if
lost track of this.
For people that just want general information and a full list of my books, the website is the best place for that, and that's irenehannon.com. And I am on social media. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, but my very favorite place is Facebook. I'm there every day. I interact with readers. I love interacting with readers there. I pretty much answer everybody, and we have great conversations. And so if you want to interact with me, I would say Facebook is the place.
Okay, awesome. Elizabeth?
I have a website, elizabethgoddard.com, and there you can find the links to my Twitter, my Facebook. I have a Facebook readers group that I love to interact with people in a more personal way, but I also have a Facebook author page. I'm on Twitter and Instagram and Pinterest, but like Irene, I hang out a lot on Facebook. So.
Oh, that's good to know. Natalie?
All of my information is on my website, nataliewalterswriter.com. And I love hanging out with readers on Instagram and Facebook. I'm on both. And so I'm always like, my husband will tell you, I'm always checking and talking. He's like, who are you talking to? I'm like, a reader, my friends. So I love hanging out with them there.
Oh, awesome. And Patricia?
I'm different. I interact most with my readers on my blog. And on
Okay.
I have a website, it's ptbradley.com. And on Tuesdays, I have what I call mystery questions. And there are 4 questions or crimes. There are 4 crimes. 3 of them are true, and I make up one. And so my readers guess which one it is.
Oh, how fun.
And so I do that, and I get anywhere from 10 to 20 comments on Tuesdays, and then on Fridays I review books that I read. So and I'm on Facebook and Instagram and all of them, but I really interact mostly on my blog.
Awesome. Well, that, you know what, this has been, you know what, I have questions everywhere, and we could be going on for hours and hours here. I will mention that if you guys, you 4 here, but any of the people attending too, want to go on to Baker's Facebook page, the questions are going to be there, and you're welcome to answer any of them. And attendees, you can ask any of these questions I didn't get to. We ran out of sticky notes. We had to go get more. That's how many questions we got here, ladies. I mean, really, we could go another hour with just the questions I haven't asked. So if you want to go on there, if you're on the Zoom, if you're on Facebook, but you authors, please feel free to go on there and interact with the questions, because that way, you know, you can get to the ones I couldn't get to tonight. So, and I got to tell you, this was a lot of fun. I learned so much, and it was such a pleasure to meet you. I'm looking forward to your next books. These are all fantastic. I really enjoyed reading them. So, and like I said earlier, if you haven't read them, get them on order and get them read. You're going to want to join the fun. So, so thank you for joining us. We sure had a good time.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. It was
Fun.
really enjoyed it.
Good, and we will do this again. That was such an interesting thing. So, and maybe we can do it in person sometime.
Yes.
I hope.
Yes.
Well, everybody have a good night, and thank you for joining us here at Baker. Bye now.
Hi.